Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is
Until the End of Crime.
Hayden, have you ever been in a car accident?
I have. I've been in a couple of car accidents, but nothing too major. When I was really young, maybe 7 or 8, maybe even younger, my mom, she had a white Lincoln Continental, and listen, I don't think that my mother was following street laws. I don't think she was following the rules of the road, if we're being honest. She loves to speed.
Most people don't follow the rules of the road. People
Yes, but
roll
do they
through stop
flagrantly
signs.
disregard them?
Yes.
Okay, well, she had a CDL at the time, so bad on her. But I remember I woke up and we were like in the middle of the road, not out of the car. We were in the car and I was like, what is going on? And I'd been asleep. And I guess someone had hit one of the side ends of the back of the car and it made us like spin out into the intersection. And that's one instance. And then I've run into people's car. I've backed into people's car. A couple of years ago, a poor 16-year-old girl on a dance team was rushing to get to her dance class and she rear-ended me and she was freaking out. And I was like, it's okay, honey. It's no big deal. You're not going to get in trouble. And she was like, yes, I am. And she was like, this is the first time I'm driving alone. But you know, those are the hard lessons you learn when you become a driver.
Do you remember the time that you were coming to see me in Pflugerville?
Oh my God. Yes, of course I remember that time. I mean, I didn't remember it when I was telling you about accidents.
Right.
But
well, that's the accident that I remember off the top of my head.
You know, I was at fault in that accident, which feels wrong because I was rear-ended.
I think that's why you were so upset when you got to my apartment.
Yeah. My insurance also went through the roof.
Oh.
Yeah. For a while, insurance for myself was like $600 a month. $725, and I had Progressive. I had like the cheapest insurance you could have, and I had 5 accidents on my driving record, but 2 of those have fallen off, so now there's only 3. And I got put on Andrew's car insurance, and he has a really great driving record, so it kind of canceled it out.
Got it. I have been rear-ended at least 4 times, which is annoying. The worst time that I got rear-ended was February of probably 2024.
Oh.
Remember?
Yeah, I do.
And I saw him not see me braking. So I tried to get up onto the median before he could hit me, and I almost did it. He saw me right at the last second, and so he pulled to the right, and I was mostly on the median, so he just clipped the back right of my car. Anyway, my favorite part about the story about the guy who hit my car is that I was grocery shopping one day and this guy kept looking at me. So I was going in the other direction.
What kind of looks?
Like trying to make eye contact with me. So I was going a different direction.
Why?
Fuck all that. Well, because it turns out I recognized him. I just couldn't place him. And then I realized that this guy who I finally made eye contact with, who made it a point to like smile and wave, boys, was the guy who had rear-ended me.
Oh, this was after the rear-ending.
Yes.
Got it.
Very friendly. And I was like, I'm sorry, what
grocery store?
H-E-B. Where do you grocery shop?
No, but I mean like where?
The one closest to my house.
Okay. Was he like flirting with you in the store?
I don't fucking know. He was just looking at me and clearly wanted me to look at him. And so eventually I did. And then he smiled and waved and I went the other direction because kindly, I am not interested in becoming friends with somebody because they hit my car. Call me crazy.
I'm sure there's people that have gotten into relationships that way.
Absolutely. More power to them. I also have a picture of his insurance card where there are like 4 different people listed on it. So I don't know that he had any business smiling at any woman in a grocery store.
All of the beta male sexist pigs, the chauvinist, hear you say that. And they're like, what? A straight man can't smile at a woman?
Yes.
Keep your smile to yourself, breeders.
And while you're at it, don't tell a woman that she needs to smile.
Oh, never do that. That's disgusting.
Okay, let's get into this. This is going to be a doozy.
Okay.
All right. On July 31st, 2022.
Recent.
Ish, yeah.
Yeah, no old-timey-wimey.
No, 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
At 5:39 in the morning, in the Cleveland suburb of Strongsville, Ohio, a black Toyota Camry collided with a brick wall on the side of the Plidco building, going approximately 100 miles per hour.
That's fast.
It is fast.
Plidco? What's Plidco?
What a great question. Let me consult my notes. I had it in here, and then I don't think I ultimately put it in here.
Why would you need to know that? Why would you need to say it?
Thank you for asking, Hayden.
She has literal notes. I know you can't see. She took out 18 sheets of pink legal paper.
11.
She does the real research. She does the hard yards for this podcast.
This was not the right method. This method has worked for me before. This was not the right method for this case. I've actually started working on this case before, and then I stepped away from it because it was too much.
Yeah.
So buckle up, Buttercup, because we're in it for the long haul. Thank you for asking. The Plidco is the pipeline development company.
Okay. Is that going to matter at all in the future? Because if there is, I have a follow-up question.
What's your question? It's not really relevant that that's the building that was hit.
You said pipeline development. Does that mean for the movement of natural resources?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's definitely not that relevant.
Okay. I thought maybe it's some kind of eco-terrorist trying to take out a corporation.
Okay.
Oh, am I onto something?
No. But I was liking that you were willing to speculate on something when we're one sentence in.
The tables have turned.
They surely have. So the best way that I can describe what the car looked like after the collision is mangled. Around half an hour later, a civilian passing by noticed the accident and reported it to emergency services.
An hour later?
Half an hour.
Half an hour later.
Yeah.
Is this a sleepy little town? I know it's a suburb of Cleveland. Do you wish I would just let you tell your story a little bit?
Well, there is a lot of information that I didn't even end up getting to put in here, so maybe it will come out as you're asking questions. Kind of like this. I didn't include that it was remarked on that this town was like upper middle class.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to get into something later that explains why it took half an hour.
Okay.
For somebody to come upon them. But it was said that this was the worst accident one officer had ever seen as he worked on photographing the scene.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it was awful.
Yeah, they hit a brick building at 100 miles an hour. When the first officers arrived on the scene shortly thereafter, one of them radioed that the car had been split into two as a result of the collision.
Split in two?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to explain the building and where the car hit it to you. So, say the building is in the shape of a backwards capital L.
Okay.
With the right side being closer to the road than the long side of the L.
Okay.
The corner they hit was right where the wall jutted closer to the street. Mm-hmm. Primarily on the passenger side is where the brunt of the collision was.
Was it a front head-on collision with it? Okay.
But primarily on the passenger side. It spun partially, but I believe it stopped short of the wall. That would be like the long side of the L.
Okay. Am I right to imagine that it hit a corner?
No, it hit a corner.
Okay.
Yeah. And it stopped moving with the tail of the car angled towards the corner that would be formed inside the L, like where the two lines meet.
Say that again?
The tail of the vehicle was angled towards the inside of where the two lines of the L would meet.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
So hitting that corner at the speed and angle they did essentially kind of split the car, according to one of the responding officers.
Okay. So did it like split vertically where it was like what I'm imagining in my head is that it was almost kind of like the passenger side of the front hit on with that corner and it caused one of those sides to like almost accordion.
Kind of. I would say that if you imagined like from immediately next to the front passenger headlight back to about where the front passenger door would end. And this is a Camry. This is a sedan. So it's four-door. All of that was kind of pulled off of the car.
Okay.
I think because they hit a corner.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Okay.
So they quickly determined that there was an occupant, the driver, and then a second occupant, and then a third. The 3 occupants in the vehicle were driver Mackenzie Shirilla, her boyfriend Dominic Russo, and his friend Davion Flanagan. All 3 had been raised in Strongsville. All 3 had to be extracted from the vehicle using the jaws of life.
Were any of them alive?
You know, oddly enough, that doesn't come up in my case at all.
Really?
Hayden.
I was like, what a mislead. What's happening?
Can you imagine I tell you about this really bad accident and then we just talk about some other random like crime that happened down the road?
Would feel a little bit like Natasha Ryan.
Oh, shade. Born March 11th, 2003, Davion Flanagan was 19 at the time of his death. He graduated from Strongsville High School, home of the Mustangs, a mascot which was donned across his chest along with the number 5 on Friday nights under stadium lights, as he was the starting running back for the high school's football team. Davion had played and competed in a myriad of sports in addition to football, such as track, baseball, basketball, and swim.
He just got to do everything.
Yeah. He volunteered as a coach for young swimmers during the summer, having to balance these 2 roles as high school football starter and mentor to these fledgling swimmers, which kept him really busy. Apparently it was a true balancing act sometimes. He had graduated a couple months prior to his death, Strongsville class of 2022. His post-graduation plans were to attend barber school because he was really passionate about doing hair. He liked to do his own hair and to do hair for his friends.
It sounds like he was really community-minded.
He wanted to open his own barbershop someday. It's said that Davion and his sisters, Divine and Dahlia, had all experienced loss and pain during their childhood. Davion and his 2 younger sisters were adopted when he was 8 years old by Scott and Jamie Flanagan. And I think being the oldest, being the protective older brother, Davion was more astutely aware of the situation than his sisters. And he told the Flanagans on several occasions that they were his second chance.
Oh, wow. So this Flanagan family took in and adopted Davion and his 2 younger sisters.
Yes.
When he was at the age of 8.
Correct.
Okay. Wow. He must have been through a traumatic incident.
Right. He did not take anything lightly or for granted, but he was also not a hard kid. He seemed to be this fun-loving, goofy, generous, and kind person who sought to make people feel loved the way he always wanted to feel loved. He and Dominic were friends and shared a love of writing music. Dominic had a recording studio in his house, and Davion would go hang out there and rap. When officers arrive on scene, they find Davion on top of the front passenger seat where Dominic was, which had been laid back all the way, and they found him face up. They said that his head seemed to have suffered a severe injury, and it was determined that he had not been wearing his seatbelt.
Oh, gosh.
He did not appear to be exhibiting signs of life, and he was the first of the 3 to be extracted from the car. And once first responders get him out of the vehicle, they realize that he is breathing.
Oh.
They call a helicopter in for him, but he died on the scene before the helicopter was able to get there, which is really crazy when you think about the half hour that it took before they were. Yeah.
This accident happened at 5:39 a.m. What were they doing at 5:39 in the morning?
I do get there.
Okay.
Dominic Russo was 20 at the time of his death, born September 24th, 2001 to Frank and Christine Russo. I'm fairly certain he graduated in 2020 from Springsville High School. He was an aspiring singer-songwriter, which was why his family had the recording studio in their home. He was one of 7 children.
7 is a lot of kids. We talk about kids and the amount of kids on this podcast a lot. 7 is a lot.
It is, yeah.
I feel like anything over 4 becomes unmanageable. Were all of his siblings his biological siblings?
Yeah.
And where did he fall in the birth order?
I'm going to guess he's one of the youngest ones in the birth order.
Okay.
But I only saw that he had 6 siblings in his obituary, so I don't know. He was described as tall with curly hair, and Dominic had also dabbled in investments and Bitcoin, according to one of his sisters. She said that he had done well with stocks. He was considering going into the military, and by the time first responders arrived on the scene, Dominic, who had been sitting in the front passenger seat without his seatbelt on, was exhibiting no signs of life and was declared deceased.
It is, if any of these young people ends up living, I'm going to be shocked. because I don't understand how anyone could survive an impact
Yeah.
of 100 miles per hour in an incident where you've explained that the car was split.
Yeah.
Because a car is supposed to, now I'm no vehicular engineer, but I think that cars are supposed to fold on themselves. I think that's part of their design, is that where your cabin is supposed to stay structurally sound, but the rest of the car, depending on where it's hit, is supposed to compress.
Like give.
Yes, so that
It
this
absorbs.
part,
Yeah.
and so to know that the impact was so strong that it doesn't even sound like there was necessarily the opportunity for that, because it was so quick and so strong.
Yeah, I have some other theories that I get into a little bit. I think I have one theory that I get into a little bit later on that kind of runs in that same vein. So when we get there, which is...
I already have so many questions. Were brake lines cut? Where had they been? Was anybody drinking? Were we under the influence? Was everyone... What was the relationship between these three? So many things I need to know.
Yeah, I think that you're going to find that you share a lot of the same questions with the first responders that arrived on the scene. And the
yeah. Okay, well, that's fair. I'm thinking like a first responder, which...
Yeah, and the investigators. Yeah, more so the investigation.
What can I say?
This crash happened 2 days before Mackenzie Shirilla's 18th birthday. I watched 2 shows that covered this case, and in one of them, she was described as popular.
Okay.
It said that any bathroom she was in had at least 10 other girls in there with her, which I'll never understand, but it is a thing. She was followed down the halls and online, seeing as she was an aspiring influencer. She graduated in 2022 alongside Davion. I'm not exactly sure when, but by March 2022, Mackenzie was living with Dominic. They had been together for around 3 years since Dominic was a junior in high school, and it seems that they were living at his parents' home.
Mm-hmm.
So not technically his house, but it's not exactly clear because he was making enough money to support Mackenzie. Again, I don't know when exactly she moved in. Friends she had in middle school remembered those years with her as very fun. She liked excitement and was very joyful.
Okay.
When she got to high school, she changed some, but that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And even throughout high school, a lot of changes take place with friends and so on. So that's not really atypical. Mackenzie was the second person removed from the vehicle. She was wearing her seatbelt.
She was the second person removed?
Mm-hmm.
And Davion was the first.
Mm-hmm.
So Dominic was last.
Because Davion's body was on top of
Dominic's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she was wearing her seatbelt, but her body was draped across the console and her head, I believe, was wedged under the dashboard on the passenger side.
Oh.
Officers realized that Mackenzie was still alive, although going in and out of consciousness. As she was being removed from the car, she allegedly asked, "How's Davion?" They called life flight for her, and she was transported from the scene to the hospital, where she underwent several surgeries. She had broken her right humerus, her right femur, several ribs, and had other internal injuries. When they got to the hospital, the doctors assessed her. Mackenzie did not report any blackouts or neurological conditions upon her admission and assessment. Dominic's sister recalls being concerned about whether or not Mackenzie would survive, and then concerned about how devastated she would be to wake up and find out that Dominic and Davion didn't survive the crash.
Are you making me feel sympathetic towards a character that I'm not going to want to be sympathetic towards later?
It's actually unclear.
Cool. Okay. While she was being removed from the car, she asked about Davion.
I think she had heard them say that he was breathing.
And she had been fading in and out of consciousness in the vehicle.
Yeah, but then they were talking to her. They said, "What's your name?" And you can clearly hear on the body cam footage. She says, Mackenzie.
Was she the only one wearing her seatbelt?
She was the only one wearing her seatbelt.
My God,
and she was the only one not on the passenger side, I think.
Never not wearing a seatbelt again. I mean, I already wear my seatbelt all the time.
I want to correct that because I do think that Davion was sitting behind the driver's seat. It's not clear if the seat had been laid back by Dominic and he was kind of laid all the way back in it or not, but for it to have hit primarily on the front passenger side and then for Davion to have ended up on top of Dominic, it only makes sense to me that he would have been on the driver's side,
right,
in the back seat.
How could he have been on the passenger side?
If it was laid back, they can't tell if the seat had been manually laid back or if it was laid back by the impact of the crash.
Oh, so as an effect or an outcome of the wreck, potentially.
Right. But how does Davion end up laying on top top of Dominic
Right.
if he was directly behind him.
No, of course. I agree with you. Wild, but I agree with you.
I mean, it's just kind of physics and science, so hopefully we don't disagree too much on that. Considering the conditions of the road were dry and clear that morning, the first thoughts about how this happened was that these were young kids, probably had been out partying, drinking, maybe doing drugs, which was furthered by the drugs found in Mackenzie's purse, including...
It's hard to hear about a car wreck with young people and not go to a place of assuming were they under the influence of something.
Yeah. So she had marijuana and 7 grams of psilocybin mushrooms.
Oh, God.
Which is confirmed as a controlled substance. I think they knew that she had mushrooms and then they tested them and found out that they were psilocybin, but...
That shrooms will make you trip hard.
Yeah, that comes back up. Also on social media, Mackenzie had many posts and videos that documented her regular use of marijuana. One video she posted of herself had audio, so not her audio, like...
Mm-hmm.
I know that you do know. I feel like the people who were investigating this case did not fully understand
they had never even heard of TikTok.
But it had this other audio of somebody else's video that she has used. And the audio says, "I'm not even that cool. I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die." And when it says, "and not die," she zooms the camera in on her face and has this playful look in her eyes and smirks, like her viewers are being let in on something. She's not actually smoking anything in the video, but those videos were definitely available. This is an aside because they're seemingly highlighted in that video, but Mackenzie liked to be false eyelashed down.
As any diva does.
Okay, but we're like, I've only known one other person who could give her a run for her money. All I'm saying, she had to have strong eyelids. But hey, if that's how she likes them, then more power to you. Get them done looking like furry little centipedes. That's fine. July 30th, 2022 was a Saturday, and there were some parties happening around the Strongsville area, including Kelly's graduation party.
Who's Kelly?
A girl who had a graduation party.
So it doesn't even matter.
No.
Okay.
I think it matters so little because in the 2 sources that I found about them being at Kelly's graduation party, Kelly was spelled different in each source.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So I don't know if they went with Davion or if they picked him up at this point, but they're hanging out and the vibe was too chill at Kelly's party. So much so that Mackenzie, I guess was trying to spice things up and allegedly approached Kelly and asks if she wants to do some acid with her and Davion.
Okay.
This was out of character. No one seems to know if this is the first time Mackenzie has wanted to try acid.
Why is it out of character if her social media profiles suggested that drug use was common for her?
That's a good question, but the only drug use that was ever documented on there was marijuana.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think if somebody comes up to me and is like, "Hey, I'd be loving some marijuana," I don't think, wow, they probably also are dabbling in acid. It just seems like a far cry.
Well, I don't think that's as far. So, okay, sure. But there's a bigger leap, I think. Okay, let me rephrase. Leaping from one hallucinogen to another hallucinogen seems more sensical to me than say, "Oh, I'm smoking weed. Now I'm going to do some meth." Or "I smoke weed. I'm going to amp up to cocaine." I think, okay, I smoke weed. I like what it does, but I want to try something even more hallucinogenic.
So this was not actually 100% confirmed. And the source that I saw, everything was bleeped. And let me continue on a little bit because
continue.
I don't wonder if the conversation wasn't about mushrooms and not acid.
Right.
Because there were literally mushrooms
in her purse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of a hazy mess. And so if that even happened, like I just said, it could have been mushrooms because both were mentioned and mushrooms were found and all of the illicit substances were bleeped.
Okay.
But either way, Kelly declined and thought it was a weird request. So Mackenzie, Dominic, and Davion left to go back to Dominic's house while they figured out the next spot they would pull up to, which ended up being Paul's. Just as relevant as Kelly's. We don't need to delve into that.
Thank you. As soon as you said Paul, I was like, okay, who's Paul?
It doesn't seem like the vibe was much more hype at Paul's, but at least Nina and Rosie are there. Nina and Rosie are kind of they're kind of the, I guess they matter as much as Karen and Gretchen matter to Regina George.
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Yeah. Nina and what?
Rosie. It had to be pretty chill though, because Mackenzie apparently falls asleep on the couch around 1 the morning of the 31st, which some of her peers are quick to point out to the police that if she was doing the psychedelics, as was suggested before, then she wouldn't have been able to fall asleep. And I just love it when teenagers teach adults about things.
Is that accurate?
If you ask these teenagers, yeah.
Okay.
You can't do acid and then fall asleep because you are, I don't know, tripping for... I don't know. We're in territory that I'm unfamiliar with.
Right.
But apparently, I think the acid in particular, you don't sleep while you're on it until you like come off of it. I don't know. This is not a drug podcast. This just kind of reminded me though of my senior English teacher in high school who told us that we didn't discover alcohol, drugs, or sex. So...
I mean, she was right. We didn't discover that.
No, but that's what it made me think of when these kids are explaining to the cops how drugs work. I was like, you think they're unfamiliar?
Well, I think it's something like, when my parents would have been marijuana smoking age, I think the THC content of like the common strain of marijuana was 2%. And now we live in a world where that number is 17%.
Okay, but I want to point out that the police are probably more aware of that 17% and the impacts than they are familiar with TikTok.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are things in here that the kids are not explaining to the adults that they probably should be. Mm-hmm. And then there are things in here that they're explaining to the adults like they got it. They know.
Right. Okay. Tell me about Susie and Rosie.
Nina and Rosie.
Tell me about Nina and Rosie.
Actually, they come up maybe once again.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. If you were going to ask Regina George to write her life story, do you think that Karen and Gretchen are prominent characters in it?
God only knows.
Okay, anyway, Mackenzie's blood is tested at the hospital and comes back with no alcohol and traces of marijuana, but not a ton. And likely it isn't enough to cause her to drive recklessly due to her being under the influence. And she wasn't driving recklessly less than a minute before the crash, because surveillance footage shows that 50 seconds before the car hits the Plidco sign and then building, Mackenzie takes a very controlled, intentional turn from Pearl Road onto Progress Drive. She slows down appropriately, she uses her blinker appropriately, and is, for all intents and purposes, driving very cautiously.
Was there any psilocybin or any other drugs found in her system?
No, just traces of marijuana. Like she likely had not, well, I guess I don't know how long it is in your system, but it wasn't even necessarily, the way I understood it, like she had any marijuana in her system from that night.
And just 50 seconds before the crash, she was still observing traffic laws.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Weird.
Yeah. But before the turning, before the crash, they were at Paul's, and Mackenzie had just woken up from a little nap somewhere between 5 and 5:15. And she's like, we gotta go. And one source talks about how Davion asks for a ride, and Mackenzie says, no, we don't have time to take you home. But Dominic is like, yes, we can give him a ride. It's not a big deal. Later on, Mackenzie says she doesn't know how Davion ended up going with them. And again, that was just from one source, so it's possible that wasn't how it all played out.
Okay.
Progress Drive, the short stretch of road bridging Pearl Road and Alameda Drive, which is only 3/4 of a mile, is in an industrial area of the town. There were lots of businesses, limited movement on these roads at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. But businesses do have surveillance cameras, and the police were able to get footage of the car's movements practically from the turn off of Pearl Road all the way along Progress Drive. And they see and hear the car strike through the Plidco sign and hit the building.
Did they see it speed up? How did it speed up to 100 miles per hour in 3/4 of a mile?
As you can imagine.
What kind of car? Oh, a Toyota Camry.
Yeah. As you can imagine, they noticed that the car has picked up quite a bit of speed since that deliberate, measured turn Mackenzie made. And while you do see the car flashing by with a blur of white lights, you never see the glare of red lights. No brakes had been applied at all. So the investigation moves to have a forensic mechanic assess the Camry. theory, because maybe there was some sort of glitch in the car's system, or worse, an idea you introduced already, did somebody tamper with this car? The investigation shifts to possible enemies.
I just think that the answer to that question is going to be no, and we're going to be even more perplexed about what has happened. It seems to me that where this is leading is that for some reason, Mackenzie just floored it and didn't make an attempt to stop or slow down. But that is just me opining based off of the information you've given me.
Sure.
I don't know why she would want to cause harm to Davion and Dominic.
Right. Well, so they're trying to figure out, was the car tampered with, which causes the investigation to shift to possible enemies of Mackenzie, since it was her car. And this shift brings about a long list of suspects.
Oh, Lord.
Mackenzie was popular, but not known for kindness. She was more like the type of popular that would create a, quote, bitch list with a friend, naming all of the people in the school that they didn't like, the things they wanted to do to them, and in some cases, the things they had done to them.
Oh, no. You can't do bad things and then document it.
Well, I guess you can when you're 16, 17 years old.
Listen, it's fine for you to make a list of people you hate. You know what? Explore those feelings. I encourage you to explore the connections between those people and yourself. However, you cannot make a list of people that you hate and then what you want to do to them, and even worse, what you've already done to them. That is, you are... what? Who's it for?
Yeah,
Who's it for?
Admittedly, you shouldn't write down your wrongdoings.
No, and don't title it bitch list. Oh my God.
The brains, they're undeveloped.
Supremely underdeveloped. I cannot. Okay, but the name bitch list is kind of cunty. I do kind of like it. I'll say that. I do. Like, you had me on board when you said bitch list.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you said that they wrote down the things they wanted to do and what they already had done, hard left turn, bad choice. Yeah. Like, all of it's bad. All of it's bad. All of it's bullying.
Yeah,
but
right.
Don't put, I cannot imagine committing to paper. Are you going to give me some of the examples of things they had done?
I don't think I have examples of things they had done, but I just think that it tells me enough to know that they had written, it was almost like a checklist, and they had already started checking some things off. And that's really all I needed to know. It
doesn't sound like these are very nice girls.
Whoa.
And Nina and Rosie were in on it?
Oh, I imagine that it was one of the two of them that had been co-author of the bitch list.
The bitch list is so wild. It is so wild.
Okay, I didn't include this, but apparently, other than me, people likened Mackenzie to Regina George and wanting their high school to kind of play out the same as Mean Girls. I guess she missed the part where she was going to get run over by a bus.
Bitch list.
Yeah, it was.
I'm going to go home and make a bitch list, but I'm not going to be writing down anything I've done or want to do.
I feel like we talk about a bitch list once a week. It's pretty short.
It is. It's a very short bitch list.
Yeah.
If I was going to feel sympathetic, it is dwindling quickly.
Yeah. So it was said that Mackenzie was someone who would, quote, burn your world down, unquote.
Burn your world down?
Mm-hmm.
Is she Gloria Allred? How is she burning your world down?
Remember high school. Think about high school. And when you think about it in that context, it can seem like it's your entire world that's being impacted by somebody else in high school.
Absolutely.
When you're in it. So now there is a list of Mackenzie's victims that they're having to look into. People online who...
Victims is so crazy. Oh. Did she victimize them? Yes. It's just funny to hear in the context of, we started out with a list of enemies, and then we hear about the bitch list. And of course, obviously, her list of victims.
Right.
It's just such, victim is evocative. It's meant to make you feel some kind of way.
Yeah.
That's why they're victim impact statements. And so it's continue.
Okay.
All of that's to say is that when we talk about something as a list of victims, that makes you sound like you are some egregious perpetrator.
Well, and they started with the ones who they had been marked as done on the to-do list, right? They looked at those people first. There are people online who would leave hateful comments. Like I said, aspiring social media influencer. So they had a directory of possible suspects. And Mackenzie wasn't well liked or trusted by her peers. One person said if Mackenzie was having a bad day, everyone was having a bad day.
It's making me wonder because the way you described Davian is very selfless, very community-minded, very people-oriented, grateful to his adoptive parents for giving him and his sisters a chance to be together, doing the underprivileged, is that correct? Underprivileged swim or summer swim program?
Yeah, coaching, volunteering, coaching.
And the way you describe him, he doesn't sound like someone who would be hanging out with somebody with a bitch list.
I don't even know if I include this, but apparently Mackenzie would get clout from hanging out with Davion because I think people actually did like him.
They actually liked him.
Right. Davion's sister Divine, she has spoken out a lot. She participated in every show that I watched. She spoke in several occasions. It comes back up again later, but she said that Mackenzie was not the nice kind of popular. She was the mean kind of popular. So I think that Davion was the nice kind of popular. So it was a little bit self-serving to hang out with somebody that people genuinely liked.
Are we going to learn more about their connection and their relationship to each other?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I think the crux of their relationship was Davion and Dominic bonded over writing music, and Dominic had the studio at his house. And so they spent a lot of time working on something that they were both passionate about together.
Okay.
And remember, Mackenzie was living at Dominic's by March of 2022.
Right.
So meanwhile, Mackenzie is in the hospital, and despite many people thinking she died at the hospital because rumors, she gets her phone back from the police, and in addition to being in daily communication with Dom's dad, she starts posting from her hospital bed. Pictures of her in a neck brace, pictures of her right appendages casted up, pictures of all of the balloons and flowers and stuffed animals and cards surrounding her in her hospital room. Again, I had to hunt for information about their birthdays, but she did turn 18, I assume, in the hospital 2 days after the accident. So I imagine some of that was part of that fanfare. And these posts finally generated the likes and follows and attention that she had been wanting when she had been posting before. Up until this point, one of the people in one of the shows, some of the people really shaded the shit out of Mackenzie on these shows.
It sounds like it.
And I didn't even include all of it. Some of the stuff, I mean, some of it made my jaw drop and some made me cackle. I didn't include all of it. It felt like it was beating a dead horse. I think you get the picture of who she was. But up until this point, she was followed primarily by people she knew. So she had not branched as far out as an influencer as she was.
She had no real network or following.
Right. But she did make a little bit of money.
Okay.
I think it was more than 51 cents.
Good for her.
Shout out to our ads. But now she was being contacted by a modeling agency, Vitality, based out of California, who commented on one of her hospital pictures that they wanted to work with her. She and her mother were seemingly thrilled to respond affirmatively. They didn't realize how much their online movements were being scrutinized by people. Or they did.
Okay.
More on that later. We get some commentary from Mom that I include later that makes it seem like she was aware of the online activity.
I'm sure it's absolutely brilliant commentary.
Within the week following the crash, Mackenzie gets out of the hospital, and a week after the crash, Dominic's visitation was held, followed the next day, August 8th, by his funeral. I didn't include this, but I do want to say that Davion's visitation and funeral were both literally a week after Dominic's.
Okay.
It seems that the day of Dominic's funeral, the police were called to the Shirilla home to respond to a report of a disturbance. Mackenzie's dad, John, told Mackenzie that she was not well enough to attend Dominic's funeral, and she apparently did not take that well. That's all I know. She took it so poorly that the police were called.
And all of these posts that she created following the accident, did any of them seem remorseful? Did they seem sad? Did they seem to emphasize the tragic loss of her boyfriend and friend?
It's funny that you ask that because unable to attend the funeral, she posted the following tribute on social media to Dom.
Okay.
I miss you, Nug. I feel like you're just going to walk in the door any second. I miss your laugh, your perfect smile. I feel your energy around me every day. I just wish it was physical. God, you are the last person to deserve this. You had such a perfect life ahead of you. I wish I told you all this more. Please wait for me. Followed by some heart emojis.
Okay.
I mean, if you're waiting for me to read something that seems like it was super remorseful, it's not there that I have.
It just
that I
doesn't
found.
sound very sincere, which I can't quantify or qualify her emotions. It just,
Right.
that's not, I don't know.
I think that's fair. I don't think anybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, the forensic mechanic's findings are as follows. The airbags worked correctly and likely contributed to Mackenzie's survival, but would not have made a difference on the passenger side. The brakes were in working order. The accelerator was working fine, as was the suspension. Everything was fine, so he took the event data recorder from the car. This is more commonly referred to as the black box. Are you familiar with the black box?
I believe so.
Okay.
So the black box records the events of the car, including braking and accelerating.
At first, I thought you were reading it off of my page. So I was like, okay, let's go to the next word. Yeah. The black box records how fast the vehicle was going, the throttle position, whether or not someone braked, if the airbags deployed, if the seatbelts were engaged, and the angle of the steering wheel. And then there are a few other factors.
Does every car do this?
Since 2014, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the memory of it is stored for the preceding 20 seconds.
Okay, interesting. So what were the findings?
So he was taking the box to access the last few seconds of that car's movements before it was abruptly halted by the Plidco building.
And then he was put on the bitch list.
Unclear.
Okay.
Shortly after her release from the hospital, Mackenzie is seen at some concert or music festival in a wheelchair.
Okay.
According to Mackenzie's mom, she had attended the concert with Dominic's cousin as another way to pay tribute to him. The cousin and Mackenzie and Dominic were all going to go to the concert together. And so when Mackenzie was in the hospital, she and the cousin, Abby, had talked about still going in order to honor him in some way.
Okay.
The few pictures I saw of her at the concert, she's mostly on her phone, and she doesn't really appear to be having some grand old time, but it still didn't sit well with people. Online, people were criticizing her, and they had been since she was in the hospital. In addition to the modeling agencies,
I could understand why someone would feel like that was attention-seeking behavior and self-serving behavior versus I'm doing this in memoriam.
Yeah, right. I think social media creates a really confusing ground for that type of stuff because even in people's dark times that you're not aware of, they post things that make it seem like things are rosy, unless they're that insufferable person who is posting about every negative thing that they've ever experienced, like how the hangnail that they have that day has ruined their entire week.
And I mean, to Mackenzie's defense, grief is so weird. And the way you experience it, the way you manage it, the way you handle it varies so widely from person to person. We cannot ascribe what her feelings were in the moment that she posted these things or what she was experiencing or how she was managing. And so social media puts you in a position to be judged and to be scrutinized without context.
Right. I feel like I have made it seem like the pictures that I saw of her at the concert were her posts. It looks like they were taken from afar by somebody who knew her. Which is why she was on her phone. And I also, to her credit, to her defense, to something, I think that I would have also felt compelled to attend an event that we were planning to attend together as a way of honoring that person. Mm-hmm. So I can understand that. In addition to the modeling agency's request to work with Mackenzie, people were saying some pretty harsh things about her. They were calling her a murderer and sending her death threats.
Not calling her a murderer. murder. That's extreme. She's also a victim of this incident, at least at this point in time that we know of.
Right.
A murderer.
Mm-hmm. So her mom, who I mentioned responded to Vitality's comment, was concerned that these accusatory comments might scare the agency away. So she responded and said that this was just a tragic accident and that Mackenzie had not intended to end her friends' lives. But as I mentioned, people were suspicious, and probably because Mackenzie and Dominic's relationship had seemed picture perfect on Instagram. But around the spring of 2022, Dominic wasn't posting Mackenzie nearly as often as he had been. Once she moved in, it seemed that she became very controlling and attached. Dominic would go to dinner for his friend's birthday, and there was Mackenzie right at his side. Dom would go hang out with his boys, and Mackenzie would tag along. Mackenzie was very petite, and even one of her ex-boyfriends, who the police spoke with, said he believed her tiny stature probably played a major role in saving her life. But part of how she maintained her figure was by eating a very particular diet, one she made Dominic pay for and prepare to her precise specifications. Apparently, according to her Instagram, it was in like all organic diet that she ate. She put a lot of emphasis on only eating organic foods.
Sorry, backtracking. This mother has a lot to do with what her daughter is doing for someone who let her move in with her boyfriend.
You know, that's not a bad point.
She is pretty consistently remarking on Mackenzie's thoughts and actions, and the truth is Mackenzie didn't even live with her.
Right. Well, and somebody in the episode points out that not only that, they really shaded the shit out of her mom too, because they said that she let her 17-year-old daughter move in with her 20-year-old boyfriend, and she wasn't even doing well in school.
Honest, I mean, that's tea. I hate to say it, but in my opinion, if we're talking a situation like this, I mean, we're no stranger to seeing things like this.
Right.
And oftentimes it's kids that need to move in with someone the least that end up doing it.
Oh, for sure.
And what do you really know about your daughter if she's making a list of girls she hates and calling it the bitch list and creating a checklist of all the nasty things that she wants to do to them?
Yeah, acting on it.
And so it...
You know what, though? I think that you're going to be not thrilled, but surprised at what her mom did know.
What she did know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be surprised.
Oh, weird.
Like, I'm surprised she does know things, but I'm not going to surprise that she knows about the awful things.
Yeah. I don't want to get out of order for things that I know
don't mess
are
up
later
the order.
on.
Don't mess up the
case.
order. This is not like your last case where I find nobody sympathetic. It's just the people I find the most sympathetic have already died.
Right.
So I'm seated
all right,
quietly now.
And despite Mackenzie obviously having a car, I mean, the Camry was registered in her name, she would sometimes have Dominic take her to and from school. He paid for vacations for the two of them, which they really tried to frame as her forcing him to take her on vacations. But I really think it's more likely that they traveled and he paid or his family paid.
Right.
Was she controlling? Were there elements where she, went too far or demanded, in my opinion, maybe too much from him? Sure, but not every little thing was some calculated move.
Right.
You know how I feel about taking human beings and turning them into a two-dimensional figure, which is what they're trying to do. So around the beginning of summer 2022, Dom and Mackenzie, who were an on and off couple, were off-ish? What the fuck is the USPS doing? Flying by.
Flying. Right over that speed bump.
No, that speed bump. I think they think that speed bump means speed up.
Yeah, that was
because the
wild.
number of people that hit that thing faster, I'm like, that this entire stretch of road is like, what, a quarter of a mile?
Uh-huh.
What are we doing?
Drove so fucking fast, he's already back. Ready to go back across.
Ain't no way. No, because he's delivering something. I think it might be a woman. It's not always the same male person.
I gotta tell you,
weird.
Just drove recklessly.
Yeah.
Whoever it is, they are a reckless driver.
I've got a cautionary tale for you, my friend. And you work for the government. I don't think that's in your...
Oh my God. What the fuck? That bitch was blazing.
It got air.
Oh my God. Not you. That's USPS. Wild.
So Mackenzie and Dom were off and on, and at this point they're off-ish. And so she started seeing Tyler Proctor from their friend group.
Okay.
They dated for about 6 weeks until he and Dom compared notes and realized that she was talking to both of them. So Tyler and Mackenzie stopped dating and then eventually also stopped hooking up.
Okay.
Which is what he told the police. So Dominic and Mackenzie's relationship was tumultuous, and they both went toe-to-toe with one another. She would belittle him and call him things that were not his name. And there was one day where Mackenzie told Dom it was over, and then she tried to come to the house later, but Dominic wouldn't unlock the door. His friend, who was there at the time, actually videoed this argument at Dominic's request. Dominic and Mackenzie were on the phone, and he's inside the home and she's outside, demanding that he opens the door. She threatens to key his car. She threatens to break into the house. She threatens to break the door down. He doesn't want to let her in because of how she's behaving and because she broke up with him. So he told her he doesn't know why she needs to come in if they aren't together.
Mm-hmm. Fair question.
Right. And she tells him, stop being a little bitch and open the door.
I'm sorry. These circumstances aren't funny, but anytime a woman calls a man a bitch, I think it's so funny.
Yeah, I guess.
Sorry. I just think it's such a pejorative against women.
Well, you don't need to apologize for it.
Right.
It's completely fine and fair that you think it's funny.
Yeah, I just think it's
little bitch.
I like the paradigm shift of
but it wasn't hilarious when I called you a little bitch.
When did you call me a little bitch?
Literally 2 seconds ago. I was like, little bitch.
Oh.
After saying it was funny, it was fine that you found it funny.
I didn't even hear you say it, so I wasn't.
Great.
Obviously, I was paying attention to myself.
Say the paradigm shift part again.
Paradigm shift.
Okay. She tells him again to open the door. Otherwise,
you little bitch.
No, otherwise there will be a serious fucking problem.
Oh, okay.
And he asks, what do you mean? And she responds, you know exactly what I mean.
Okay. That feels very vague and threatening.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything about this scene that, I don't know, strikes you as odd?
They had broken up.
Uh-huh.
And she's at his home trying to get herself into the door. Mm-hmm. His friend is there.
Right.
Is it Davian?
I don't think so.
Okay. He has a friend there who he's asked to record this. Mm-hmm. And I'm supposed to find something out of the ordinary?
No, not necessarily. I just want to kind of draw attention to this fight because I do want to circle back to it later on.
Well, I think, okay. Maybe people who have never worked with teenagers to such a degree that we have, I think that they might find this behavior surprising. But in 2022, I had kids coming in telling me crazy stuff then. The way they frame crazy exes, crazy ex-girlfriend, crazy ex-boyfriend, I don't find anything about the scenario out of that ordinary. And I've heard teenagers talk to each other that way.
Oh, yeah.
Or report that they've talked to each other that way.
Sure.
And something like a vague threat about, what'll happen. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't find that terribly distressing. I might tell a student or a young person, you should report that to somebody, or I can help you report that to somebody. But in a lot of context, I would think, well, gosh, that's how they talk to each other. Nothing is out of the ordinary here.
After the second time that I saw the video, because it's in all the shows, my first question, which goes back to they went toe to toe, but my first question is, why are you still on the phone with her? Mm-hmm. Because you're participating, you're kind of playing the game. Or, and this is the part that stood out to me, asking somebody to record it, to me indicates a level of concern for yourself. Like, it's not uncommon to receive threats. It is typically a sign of, Nicole Brown Simpson had documented her stuff because she didn't want her ex-husband to get away with murdering her when she figured that he was eventually going to do so.
In that vein, what I would offer is that young people in this time period record everything. And in these relationships that are so tumultuous, I think that there is some affirmation, some level of excitement I have recorded this person behaving erratically, and now I can share that with others to justify what I'm saying and feeling. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I have no idea. I haven't seen the footage that you're talking about. But, it's like every kid lines up to record every fight, not to do some kind of kind and benevolent act of reporting, but because they want to send it to their friends and put it on Snapchat and say, isn't this shit wild? And get the validation of other kids, other youths being like, oh yeah, that is wild. That's crazy. Blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So for me, I can't really quite understand the motivation, but I assume it could be many things.
Another incident that was struggling. We're just struggling along.
Well, it's really close to struggling along, so I get it. It fits.
Another incident that was
Incident.
Another incident that was troubling Dominic's mother is that a few weeks before this crash, he called her from the passenger seat of Mackenzie's car as she was driving along I-71. He was frantic because he was telling his mom that Mackenzie was driving erratically and threatening to crash the car.
Okay. Well, case closed. That was the end, right?
No.
Oh, okay. A pattern of behavior.
That might be something that's being established.
Okay.
At the very least, circumstantial evidence.
Yeah. Okay, so continue. I'm sorry, but that's where we're headed.
Right. I think because of other text messages that I have seen, that during this erratic driving moment, which I understand to be that she was driving at a high speed, Dominic was trying to prevent her from crashing by threatening to grab the wheel, attempting to grab the wheel, grabbing the wheel. But the text exchange that gave a nod to this idea that Dominic might have at the very least mentioned grabbing the steering wheel has Dom telling Mackenzie, you threaten to end my life all the time. Bye. And Mackenzie responds with, it's okay. All I care about is you trying to end my life and put it in your hand on the steering wheel and trying to end it. So I think that this is probably in reference to the Interstate 71 incident, but nothing necessarily said that. And also, yes, I understand that it wasn't a 100% coherent text message, but hey,
okay,
they can't all be winners.
Yeah, I was a little confused, but I think I'm tracking.
Yeah, that she was saying that he put his hand on the steering wheel is kind of what I took from it. The Russo family believed that Dom was outgrowing Mackenzie, which is why he stopped posting her and began pulling away and trying to end things. And this didn't sit well with Mackenzie considering she was controlling. And Dominic was part of her online brand. Without him paying for her influencer lifestyle, she would just become another high schooler. In my opinion, Mackenzie's posts were attempting to be really risque and edgy. She was trying to seem more grown than she was. Sometimes in lingerie, sometimes with joints that looked like cigars.
And she was 17 when she was posting these things.
16 and 17 is really when she was doing the bulk of this posting. There were pictures of her at college parties, drinking. And I mentioned some of Mackenzie's followers before.
And where was her adult or grown person supervision then? Where was the oversight?
But she had one follower who liked almost all of Mackenzie's posts.
Oh, don't tell me it's mom.
Natalie Shirilla, her mom.
Okay. Does the mom come under fire in this situation?
Not enough, in my opinion.
She liked her photos of her in lingerie
at
when
college
she was
parties.
16 and 17. Oh, Cameron.
Oh, Hayden.
That's awful.
Oh, Miss Elphaba.
What kind of chance did this girl have? Continue. I don't want to speak as if she's already known to have done something wrong.
You wait. This mom is something and then some. So Mackenzie was described as a wild child who did not have boundaries. And my speculation is that she was taught that she had no boundaries. People mention her parents, but in everything I read and watched, whenever her parents were mentioned in a negative light, almost every instance, the details that gave insight to those that I was able to find really pointed that finger at her mother more than her father. He's not blameless. He is not innocent. And I did hear something unfavorable from him that also indicates that mom was not alone. But for the most part, it seems like mom was really at the helm. So I already mentioned this, but some of the people that were interviewed for the shows that I watched really shaded the shit out of Mackenzie. It was said that in middle school, Mackenzie was really fun, but in high school, she she shifted to someone who was dark, mean, and aggressive. She ditched any friends that she felt didn't rise to the level of cool enough, and they said she dressed like she wanted to work at a strip club.
Damn.
They said other things. Again, I didn't need to put all of it in. But the idea that people were upset with her was probably rooted in some of this disdain that people felt for her before the crash.
Right.
I know that I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, so bear with me because a lot of this unfolds simultaneously, and I don't want to go too far in one direction and then have to bring us all the way back to the beginning. It does all converge at some point. So while Mackenzie was still in the hospital, when she came out of surgery, it is said that she was devastated to learn of Dominic and Davian's deaths. A detective went to talk to her as part of the investigation pretty shortly after she was able to. And all of the Shirillas were hesitant to talk to him.
Okay.
They had hired an attorney. They knew online there were musings of this being Mackenzie's fault. So they were trying to work under advisement of their legal representation.
Which is totally fair.
Right.
That's totally fair.
No shade.
I understand it.
Look, you catch me in a situation, I'm going to talk to an attorney.
Right.
Guilty, not guilty, wasn't even there 200 miles away. You think I'm involved? I'm going to speak to an attorney.
People are going to think if you're in that situation that you're going to look bad no matter what choice you make. Mm-hmm. So at least make the choice that's going to offer you protection.
Absolutely. So Mackenzie and her mom did end up talking with the detective a bit. This audio is recorded, and one of the first things Mackenzie asks the detective is if they can just take her license away for 10 years.
I don't think that's the charge for manslaughter. I don't think that's the typical...
Probs not. So the conversation carries on, I assume, and then Mackenzie asks her mom something, but it isn't in English, or at least
Pig Latin.
It is in a gibberish-like English. Fortunately, because this conversation was recorded, investigators were able to decode what she was saying because it was almost like a Pig Latin-esque language.
I would have never guessed that that's what it was going to really actually be.
Yeah, it wasn't like the Pig Latin that we learned as children, but it was structurally similar, where it's a modification of the words themselves. And what they determined, she asked her mom, was, "Can we tell the police I had a seizure? Can we tell the police something like that?" To which her mom replied in plain English, "We can."
Okay. And they then said I had a seizure?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. That wasn't part of I didn't see.
But the mom said we can?
Yeah. She was like, yeah, we can. We can tell them that.
But then they didn't say that.
I didn't see all of the body cam footage or hear all of the audio. This was shown in sections of an episode that I was watching, so they picked and chose the parts to include. It wasn't the full audio.
It sounds like Mackenzie knows that she's messed up, whether it was on purpose or not, and she's ready to do anything she can to try and lighten a potential sentencing.
Well, remember, people online had been hurling accusations about what they believed really happened. Mackenzie started mentioning that she had hit her head as a result of that, which her head was wedged under the dash on the passenger side. Remember, she was like draped over the console.
Mackenzie, sorry. I just have to stop you for a second. Mackenzie does not strike me as the kind of person that would wear her seatbelt, especially if her boyfriend and friend were not wearing their seatbelt.
So there was some speculation that the boys had been wearing their seatbelts, but when they realized that she was driving crazy, they were trying to get out of the vehicle.
Trying to jump out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But that's unclear.
Okay. We don't know that for sure. That's just speculative.
Unless the black box reveals.
Oh, we're still going to get those later?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the black box reveals that, though.
Okay.
Look at me introducing a hypothesis that I know is not.
Like you wrote the case.
Researched the house down boots. Okay, so now Mackenzie is saying that she blacked out after the turn and had no recollection of anything. And one of the things about the turn is I saw a map, and if she were taking Davion home, she wouldn't have turned. She would have continued straight on Pearl Road.
Okay.
So instead, she turns on this path through this industrial area that it turns out was familiar to Mackenzie. GPS and cell phone records showed that Mackenzie had been driving around that area only only 3 days prior to the crash, and she'd spent hours driving around that area that, as far as I can tell, was less than a square mile.
Weird.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to say the least, that's odd.
Yeah.
The same area, the same half a mile.
The same path.
Over and over. The one she took when she turned.
I don't know about over and over, but she drove that area, that path.
Is the suggestion that she was scoping out a place to wreck?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So the night of October 29th, Mackenzie and 2 friends go to a Halloween party at Ohio University. They've got a TikTok video showing them swaying in a hotel room.
Is this after the accident?
Yeah, that was July 31st.
Okay.
And then the camera is covered and uncovered to reveal them in their matching costumes.
You know, this is the kind of accident that you assume and hope changes someone's character for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's clearly not what happened.
Just wait. This Halloween TikTok really did not go over well.
Okay.
So they're in matching costumes. There are ripped black bodysuits, black miniskirts, a bandana top, boots. What they're all wearing isn't so much what matches, aside from that it is all black, but their makeup is all done the exact same. White paint with black circles painted over their eyes, kind of like a raccoon. And demonic clown smiles that stretch from ear to ear, painted in blood red.
Okay.
They were zombies.
Okay. That's not supposed to be the upsetting part, right?
It's very upsetting.
Oh, okay.
Because people were scandalized that she would be dressed as a corpse, in essence.
I see it and I don't.
Right. Later on, we can get into some of the conversations about the posts and the online presence that was ultimately used to create this case against her.
Okay.
So I know you remember the black box.
Mm-hmm.
Before the results came back on that, a friend of Davion's headed to the police station to show them something he'd noticed on an app on his phone. Tyler Croy, Davion, and several other friends shared their locations with one another on Life 360. Are you familiar with Life 360?
Oh gosh, I've heard all about Life 360 for the last, 8 years, last 6 years. It's an app that parents can put on their child's phone. And this is how it's typically used from my understanding, which allows them to track and locate their kids wherever they go with their cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've also heard students in the past talk about sharing their location with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And even our good friend Hannah in the past, when she had gone on dates with new people,
Mm-hmm.
she would share her location with me in case something happened.
Yeah.
We would know where Hannah was last seen. And so I am familiar with Life 360, and I feel like I'm familiar with it in the case of teenagers.
For sure. You and I have heard about friends sneaking out but leaving their phones behind.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I'm sure they would love a shout out, but will ignore that for now.
I originally had them in here. So, yeah, Life 360 records real-time data about your location, including the speed you're moving at, apparently.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it disturbed...
That's so intrusive. But in this case, it sounds like it's going to be good.
Yeah, it disturbed Tyler, who had likely been looking at the app to help make sense of the final moments of his friend's life, because he noticed that Davion was moving at upwards of 90 miles per hour. And until the car collided with the Plidco building, the vehicle never slowed down.
Oh, wow.
Which is the same data that came back on the black box. It showed that it had taken the car somewhere between 20 and 25 seconds to reach somewhere between 90 and 100 miles per hour. It had 100% acceleration.
Oh.
With 100% force on the gas pedal, and it had 0% braking.
So intentional.
They believed Mackenzie had spent hours in the days leading up to the crash driving around the Plidco building area doing a dry run of the exact path she would fatefully take in the early hours of July 31st. And the investigation had led to a chilling conclusion.
That's just sinister. I don't have the right word for it exactly. Duplicitous isn't strong enough. A lot of my old faithfuls in situations like this are not strong enough.
Mm-hmm. So the conclusion was that this was not an accident. It was a double homicide and likely a suicide attempt.
So they think she also wanted to die? I'm excited to hear why.
If you hit a vehicle, Really,
well,
if you hit anything at 100,
seatbelts.
right? If you hit anything at 100 miles an hour, which is why they think that they had them on and were taking them off to try to get the heck out of Dodge, but she was just going so fast and in such a short period of time.
Well, and it's, some vehicles will not let you open the door. The locks won't go up.
Mhm.
There's so many different mechanisms that could have kept them in the vehicle.
Right.
I think that just from what you've shared so far, it makes more sense to me that she knew that they didn't wear their seatbelts. And especially if that chair was reclined beforehand and he was just comfy. But by the same token, who can say? It doesn't sound like we know.
I have a theory that I'm going to introduce later.
Okay.
But I do think that she was not anticipating surviving this.
Okay. I'm ready to hear more then.
So after the zombie Halloween moment, people were upset. All the while after the crash, they'd been monitoring Mackenzie's online movements and behavior and sharing it with the police, including members of Dominic's family. I said before that his dad, Frank, spoke with Mackenzie daily, which is true. There was also communication between Mackenzie and Christine, Dom's mom. Exchanging iMessages, Christine asks Mackenzie, "What made you start speeding?" Mackenzie, "I don't remember the accident. All I remember is turning on the street and then my vision fading into black. I wish I could remember. It would make me feel a little bit better."
How fucking ridiculous.
She also told Christine that if she had crashed the car on purpose, she would have made sure that she had died. Another person who was taking information about Mackenzie's movements to the police was Divine Flanagan. She was struggling to cope with the loss of her brother, having been re-traumatized along with Dahlia by yet another loss in their young lives. 6 weeks after Davion's death, his mother received flowers and a text message from Mackenzie, although it's a little unclear if these were real flowers or not, because immediately preceding the text message, she sent a bouquet emoji and said, "I would never do this. This was just a terrible accident."
I would never do what, bitch? You did it. Whether it was intentional or not.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You did it.
Yeah. Davion's dad said that as Divine was coming across Mackenzie's posts, the family felt disrespected by her. And
I bet they did. I bet they did. Everything you've told me, I bet they were incredibly offended.
And they just wanted her to put her phone down and grieve, seem remorseful, anything. They believed that this was a terrible, tragic, life-altering accident. But still, she had been the one driving the car, so she should behave in a way that would indicate she was hurting too. They didn't know that Tyler Proctor, her friend and romantic fling for 6 weeks during the summer, had been telling the police that Mackenzie likely drove into the building on purpose because she was arguing with Dominic, but also that she had probably had little to no regard for Davion whatsoever. On November 4th, 2022, Mackenzie Shirilla was arrested facing 12 charges, including 2 counts of aggravated murder.
Wow.
Due to her age at the time of the incident, a hearing is held via Zoom to determine if she's going to be tried in juvenile court or as an adult.
I hope she gets tried as an adult.
It turns out the case does meet the criteria to have it moved into adult criminal court, so it is.
Okay, good. That's what I like to hear.
Adult charges carry the possibility of life in prison. And in the Zoom trial, you can see her on screen, and everything seems very laid back for her, almost like she's bored, until it's established that she's going to be tried as a juvenile. Until it's established that she's not going to be tried as a juvenile.
I was like, don't tell me that they fucking went back on it that fast. Oh, so did her ears perk up when she knew something was on the line?
Well, much like you did a moment ago when I misspoke, she appears gagged.
Gooped, gagged.
I had gooped in there too. And shout out to Mohart. So, not seemingly the outcome she expected. This aligns with what one of the talking heads in one of the shows implied. This was probably one of the first and only times that Mackenzie was having to face consequences.
Mm-hmm. I didn't place it, but this sounds exactly like someone who has never had to deal with real consequences in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's had consequences before doesn't create a bitch list.
Mm-hmm. Someone who's had consequences before doesn't wake up from surgery, find out that 2 people who were in the vehicle she was driving died, and ask if they can't just take her license for 10 years.
And in my opinion, that lack of discipline is a lack of parenting.
Again, they mentioned that her parents couldn't help her out of this one, but I maintain that one of those parents was rather heavy-handed in making sure she had never truly had to face the music.
Mm-hmm.
Both played a role, but I just think one got the Oscar, you know?
Yeah.
After this, Mackenzie and her defense attorney were attempting to prevent a trial. They didn't want to go to trial, so they offered up a plea. Mackenzie was willing to plead guilty and serve juvenile probation. probation.
Oh, that's not a plea, honey.
The victims' families declined this plea offer.
Juvenile probation if she pled guilty to aggravated murder?
2 counts.
And then
10 other
counts.
charges. Yeah.
Dumb. They came with nothing.
Right. Well, I think Mackenzie, that was as far as she was willing to go. She really, every step of this process, baffled her. And again, that's not surprising when you think of it in the context of someone who's never actually had to face consequences.
Oh, God. The fallout from an unmitigated, unmonitored, undisciplined childhood is crazy.
Yeah, 15 years later when they enter adulthood.
Let me get this straight. Mackenzie and her lawyer said, you know what? I'll plead guilty. Just give me juvie probation. And the families of Dominic and Davion were like, no, get fucked. We are not agreeing to that.
I can't confirm that they said get fucked, but basically.
Got it. Okay. I think that is the normal and right reaction. It shows that she learned nothing.
Yeah.
It shows a lack of accountability.
Yes. So since Mackenzie didn't seem to want to offer a harsher sentence up for herself than juvenile probation, which, reminder, wouldn't have even been on the table if this had happened 2 days later, she decided to take her chances at trial. But she wanted a bench trial.
Awfully brave.
Why do you think she wanted a bench trial? This is all speculation. I don't know why she wanted a bench trial.
Because her social media presence, jurors having the ability to see those things, I think that either she or her lawyer knew she would not be a sympathetic defendant.
Maybe.
What do you think?
I know that what I think is mostly framed in the context of knowing that the judge is a female, but I think that Mackenzie is probably very used to manipulating the adults in her life on a one-to-one basis. I think it's much easier for Mackenzie to get one person on her side empirically than it is for her to get a group of people to go along with her. Because remember, she was not liked by people.
Right.
I think that she has learned in her life that she does better when there are fewer people.
There's still evidence brought onto a bench trial. Is she aware?
I don't think there's a lot that she really truly recognizes.
Okay. Surely. Okay. Oh, you know what? Okay. Cool. Good for you.
All right. So she comes to the trial with the ever popular defendant's makeover, which includes little to no makeup, no false lashes, hair down, wearing a light pink fitted t-shirt with scalloped edges. In addition to all of this, she's also wearing some weird contraption on her right arm that's anchoring her forearm and creating a 45-degree angle of her elbow. This does not last throughout the duration of the trial, and also it's been like a year.
Props.
And she wasn't wearing anything on her arm by Halloween or her arrest on that right arm. And those things happened 3 months after the crash. She's very demure, very mousy, very innocent, very dichotomous of the Mackenzie portrayed in her online persona, of which videos and photos were included in evidence. So the trial begins, and the prosecutor lays out all of the evidence and points out that Mackenzie used her car and Dominic and Davion's trust of her as weapons.
Ooh.
I've already basically explained all of the evidence that was used in the trial, with the exception of the black box that could seemingly only be certified to have recorded the last 5 seconds of the car's functions. To which Mackenzie's defense attorney asks how intentional homicide can truly be established with only 5 seconds of data. The only thing that 5 seconds of driving data can establish definitively is reckless driving.
What about the Life 360 evidence? Was that taken into evidence? Was that used?
I don't know if that was used in the trial.
Are you not intimately familiar with every single exhibit of the prosecutions?
So I was there, obviously, but I must have gone to the bathroom at that point.
Oh, got it.
So Natalie Shirilla takes the stand and claims that Mackenzie had never intimated to her that she was suicidal. She did, however, suffer from POTS.
Okay.
So postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And so when her blood pressure dropped, she would have fainting spells, basically.
Did she have any kind of documented proof that Mackenzie had POTS?
Well, she had POTS according to her mom.
Sure.
When the defense attorney asks her if she had ever seen Mackenzie pass out from POTS, Natalie confirms that she has. When asked how many times she's witnessed this, she said multiple, a couple for sure.
Sure. Okay. Sure, Jan. That's talk about throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks.
So the prosecutor went kind of hard on her about this condition because he did not find it to be responsible parenting to permit your 16-year-old child with a condition that periodically causes them to pass out without warning to get a driver's license. I'm not sure if he did, but if I were the prosecutor, I would have made sure to ask why Potts was not reported at her hospital admission when she was telling them she didn't have any blackouts or neurological issues.
Absolutely.
Was this included in her medical history at intake? Did she have a formal medical diagnosis? I don't know.
And I'm sure Natalie said, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Natalie's a peach, but like one that fell off the tree and has been sitting there for a couple weeks.
Rotten.
Oh, I didn't say that. At another point, the defense attorney introduces the idea that Dominic could have grabbed the wheel, as if that proves that Mackenzie wasn't responsible when her fuzzy Prada slipper was flooring the gas pedal. I include that detail because the prosecutor included it in one of his interviews for these shows because he wanted to get this little dig in. The devil wears Prada.
Oh, God. That's so trite. That's so... okay. He thinks he's living in Legally Blonde. The devil wears Prada. Imagine walking away thinking that's your biggest serve.
For what it's worth, because I love to conjecture, I think Dominic probably did grab the wheel to try to prevent the crash.
Yeah, I bet he didn't. Who wants to crash? Who wants to die? In this instance, young people who were making plans to go into the armed forces and had already done a good job of making stock market moves and Bitcoin moves. And Davian, who seemed like he really had a servant's heart.
He wanted to open a barbershop. He was applying to go to barber school. He wanted to own a barbershop. Like both of these young men had dreams that they were working towards.
And what dreams did Mackenzie have for herself? To become a famous influencer?
Yeah, that's the one I know of. Known for fashion. So again, this is completely all me, but I think that Dominic probably did grab the wheel because otherwise the vehicle would have hit the long side of the building head on at more than 90 miles per hour and there would have been no survivors. If she had continued straight from her path on Progress Drive, assuming there are no trees in that direct line, she would have hit the building straight on. I think the reason that it hit the corner of the building is because he was trying to redirect the car. If there were trees or something that she swerved to avoid, or if Dominic pulled the wheel hard towards himself, that would explain where she hit the building.
This girl knows exactly what happened.
And I think if she hadn't been going damn near 100 miles per hour, Dominic pulling the steering wheel may have veered the car off the path of the building. I agree with you. Your position is that she knows. My position is I agree. She knows.
That's what I think.
Yeah. So on August 14th, 2023, the judge delivered her verdict, guilty on all 12 counts. She said it was a methodical, deliberate, and purposeful murder of two young men.
I wonder if she was glad she did a bench trial.
Every step of this, I told you, she was gooped and gagged every turn.
She made the worst choice at every possible opportunity.
I don't know that there was a right choice. I mean, unless she goes back in time and doesn't map out this route. If she hadn't done it, that would have been the right choice. But I don't think once it happened, there was a right choice for her to make. I guess maybe you don't respond enthusiastically to a modeling company from your hospital bed while people are accusing you of murdering people, but I digress.
I would feel such shame and responsibility and grief. And again, I can't say that that's how I would react, 100%, but based on what I know about myself and how I handle grief and how I handle feelings of guilt, that could never be me. I would feel so...
I'd never post on social media again.
No, I would disappear from the face of the earth. I would try to serve people if I was able to in a way that was meaningful.
Right.
And maybe at some point I would share my story as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, for sure.
But this posting on social media within a week to this modeling agency to the Halloween party and the zombie outfits.
If you are interested in that.
No remorse.
It's going to come back again pretty soon here. So at the sentencing hearing, both of the boys' mothers, Christine Russo and Jamie Flanagan, deliver victim impact statements, in addition to Davion's sister Divine. Other people did as well, but those were the ones that were shown in the shows that I watched. I did yesterday spend some time clicking through the sentencing phase, and other people spoke as well. I want to say some of Dom's siblings also spoke.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the trial, the prosecution outright says that Davion was nothing more than cargo as far as Mackenzie was concerned on the night of July 31st, 2022.
Why would you say that?
To make her seem like more of a monster. But it was a really shitty thing to say. It's a really shitty thing for the family to have to hear repeated throughout. And it causes Davion to get somewhat lost in this case. Even in the way that the families were notified of the deaths, Dominic's parents were told in person, but Davion's dad was called. The Flanagans lost their son and brother, and then they had to go through it all again in a way when they learned that it wasn't some accident, but that he was murdered. And then once again, they have to deal with this callous and repeated disregard for Davion. It just feels like blow after blow after blow.
In what world does the prosecution do better by dehumanizing a victim?
Because he was framing it as Mackenzie dehumanized Davion.
And how does that make her look better?
The prosecution is not interested in making her look better.
Sorry. I was thinking you were saying that the defendant brought that up.
No.
Sorry. Okay.
No, the prosecution was doing it to effectively vilify her, but we didn't need to.
I don't love that from the prosecution either, because they're seeking justice on behalf of this family, of this victim.
Right.
So where was the consideration? Hopefully they did that in a way that was, or at least attempted to provide some kind of calculus that could help illustrate the callousness that Mackenzie operated in. Because if it was just that plainly, that's heart-wrenching.
Hold that thought.
Okay.
But I know you're going to have thoughts when I go through this part. So after the families of Dominic and Davion deliver their victim impact statements, Natalie Shirilla speaks. This is clearly a situation that most people will not have to deal with, and she's clearly nervous and she understands what's at stake. So I want to preface everything with that, but I am going to read to you what she said in court.
Oh, God. I can't wait to hear what Natalie Shirilla had to say.
I am in no way going to do this justice. If you've got some time, go look this up on your own, watch it yourself, because there is no way that I am going to convey this the same way that she did. My name is Natalie Shirilla. I just want to say, am I allowed to address them at all? Judge, sure. I just want to say to the families that I'm broken, sad, and lost, and my heart hurts for everyone. Okay? Davion was her new friend, and Dom was the love of her life and was part of our family. Okay? I'm just so sorry that this happened. We're heartbroken. Okay? And then, Your Honor, this was a terrible, tragic nightmare accident to have happened that she has no memory of, and she will never emotionally or physically recover from it. She almost died too. And we're asking that you please not run the sentences consecutive. He was family, and we all loved each other. That morning of the accident, she called me. I got a phone call that there was a car accident, okay? So I went to the hospital, and I didn't even know who was in the car. The names had not been confirmed yet. And I was like, I'm gonna cry because I miss Dom so much. We loved him so much. So I called Dom like over and over again, praying that he was going to answer the phone. And he didn't answer the phone. So then I tried to call his mom, and she didn't answer the phone either. And I still didn't know who was in the car. I didn't even know if she was alive. I didn't know what was happening. So then when we're in the waiting room, and then his mom she did call me. So I answered the phone, and I was like, oh my God, like, I don't even know who was in the car. Like, what's happening? Was that Dom? And she said, what do you mean? My son is dead. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And then she said something like, and now I have to wait till your kid gets out of the hospital. And then I didn't hear the rest. I was like, we loved him so much. And I hung up the phone. I did not talk about social media. I didn't even know what was going on yet. Okay. So then that was it. So in the hospital, that Vitality post, I commented on that because somebody had called her a murderer. Okay.
I am getting so sick of hearing okay.
I know. And she's not a murderer. So she didn't even have her phone at that point because the police had still had it. Okay. So, I jumped on and I was like, she's not a murderer. She's more sad than hurt than most of these people commenting. She's been trying to get in touch with you, but at that point it was just an accident. So I commented on her behalf, not because of the modeling opportunity. Who cares about that? I don't want them to refer to her as a murderer, okay? And I don't even know how that comment got on the phone because the police still had her device and she could not access her phone or social media. That's why I did it. And I had called them asking if they could shut down social media because people were calling her a murderer and making death threats and organizing groups to, take her out when she got out of the hospital and stuff. So I didn't even want her phone. I don't care about her phone. I don't care about social media. I just wanted them to stop calling her a murderer so that when she did come to, and she did come out of surgery, multiple surgeries, that she wouldn't see all these people calling her a murderer because she would never, ever, ever murder the love of her life, okay? For Halloween, for 3 months after the car accident, she would only wear his clothes. She would only eat the snacks he ate. She would only listen to the music he wrote, okay? She was laying in bed for 3 months crying. There was a shrine of him next to her with photos and things that he liked. And this flower that lights up that he got her because he wanted it to be fresh and alive forever. It's like a Beauty and the Beast flower, okay? She's got this shrine of him next to her, so she was crying for 3 months. So her friends asked if she wanted to go out trick-or-treating or something on Halloween. And it was at OU. And she didn't even want to go. She said, I don't know, should I go? She couldn't even walk yet, barely. So I told her, I said, baby, please go. It's Halloween. You've been laying for 3 months crying, only listening to his music. Please go have just a moment of fun. A moment of fun. So we told her to go. My husband drove her. I brought her back home. She just needed a second of fun from losing her whole world. Her whole world. So that was us. We told her to go. And that concert, she went to with Dom's cousin Abby. They picked her up. They brought her there. That was Dom. Mackenzie and Dom and Abby all decided to go to this concert together while they were in the hospital. That was for Dom. Everything she did after the accident was either in honor of him, to be close to him, or just to be by him in any way that she can. She's like devastated and tragic. He was the air that she breathes, okay? And then went with his cousin we spent all kinds of time with them after the accident. What was the other thing, Judge? I'm hearing an awful lot about your daughter. I'm not hearing very much about the 2 dead people. Dominic, okay? I'm asking you for a leniency because this was a tragic accident that she does not remember. And Davian, we don't know. He's a new friend. I'm so sorry, Judge. What does that mean? That his life is worth less? No, Judge. Okay. God, no, not at all. They all loved each other. They all spent every day together. You know what I mean? I don't know, Judge. Isn't that part of the problem, Mrs. Shirilla? I'm sorry, Judge. Isn't that part of the problem that they all trusted each other? Isn't that part of... It's not a problem at all. It's wonderful, Judge. It's a problem how they all ended up in the car together and 2 of them ended up dead. I understand what it looks like. I'm saying that it was a tragic accident. She would never, Judge. Well, we're going to have to disagree on that. I understand, Judge. Right. And I respect your position, but you disagree with me. I understand. But anyway, that's it. I just wanted to address those. We told her to go to those things, and then she did go with Dom's family. So look at it Don't look at it. Look on that with different eyes if you can. Please, Judge. Those things are not relevant. Not at all. Not at all, Judge. No, not at all, Judge. I agree. But she's if you would have a moment, all you would need is 5 minutes of a conversation to have with her to learn who she is. Just that you'd need 5 minutes to learn who she is and what she's capable of not doing and doing, right? And you would see for yourself, Judge. Thank you. That's all. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Completely missing the mark. Missing the point. It sounds like the judge even tried to kind of throw her a bone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, don't you want to get to what's important?
Right.
What you should be saying? And instead of hearing that, she heard, let me double down.
To me, it sounds like she was, it sounds like she's a person or the person who typically excuses anything and everything that her child or children
100%
do. And that she was not content with the information that she was asked about when she was on the stand because she, and I think Mackenzie, are used to dealing in like a gray area that's not really relevant to excuse things. I mean, she's trying to negate some of the evidence that was already introduced, and her child has already been convicted. She is already convicted. She has already been determined to be legally responsible. And so... It's baffling.
I wonder if he or she,
He.
did he walk them through the scenarios? Did he tell them, hey, when you go up there to do a statement, it needs to be something that indicates remorse and sadness and
Yeah, she said the first thing was she is heartbroken for everybody. She really emphasized whenever she was using first person plural in particular, she emphasized that. And she wanted to put Dominic, Davion, and Mackenzie all in the same category of victims. And so she did everything she could in every selection that she made word-wise to try to do that.
Which was a mistake because at that point, like you said, she was already found guilty.
Right.
This is the sentencing.
Look, I don't know if the defense attorney was worth anything or not. At the very least, with Natalie or Mackenzie, I don't think that he was dealing with people who were realistic.
Not rational.
Yeah, they were not realistic or rational. I think the mom is used to talking her daughter out of things, out of trouble, and she thought that that's what her statement was going to be.
I don't want to go on a soapbox about our previous profession, but when we talk about education and we talk about consequences that young people face when they do something that is immoral or unkind, schools are so terrified that if they uphold any kind of rule or regulation that they're going to get sued or that someone will raise a stink about something in a way that's unfavorable to them. And so kids go unpunished. They go without consequences at school too.
I would also I want to counter that they are hesitant to enact any punishment because they're afraid that this mom comes up.
Absolutely. And it is because of parents like this that so many kids they don't face consequences at home. They don't face consequences at school. And then when they reach adulthood and they do become ultimately responsible for the decisions they make, they are unprepared. There is no understanding or conceptualization of how the world really works. And what is so unfair to Mackenzie is, from everything I've learned about her, there were lots of opportunities where a parent could have stepped in and said, I'm going to help you understand how to be a better person. Or I'm going to help you understand that creating a list called the bitch list is inappropriate. Doing things to hurt other people intentionally is inappropriate. There are consequences for your action. It doesn't sound like this list was secret.
Well, it definitely came out.
So it's one of those things where I don't feel bad for Mackenzie, but to a degree, I almost feel aggrieved for her because
for how she got here.
Yes, because someone somewhere. Because children are not responsible for their own education. They're not responsible for developing their understanding of how the world actually works. That is on their caretaker. That is on the people that provide them everything, their parents. And she was failed. In my opinion, she was failed because someone who had been instructed better, someone who had known better, someone who had been forced to face consequences could have made a different decision.
Right.
And I hate that for her. And I hate, like you just said, I hate that the mom is still doing it. Because it's
in a court of law.
You're still making the same mistake that you've made her entire life, which is trying to protect her from any kind of consequence.
Neither one of them has learned from this.
What should ultimately be the ultimate learning lesson, the ultimate fate changer, eye opener, and they've just completely ignored it.
Right over the bows.
Yeah.
Of both of them.
I think that is what makes me more upset than anything, is it sounds like this is something that could have been avoided if someone had learned how to be a decent human.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree. I felt it was necessary to include because I think that it really sheds a lot of light on this whole situation. So the judge delivers the sentence. Mackenzie is sentenced to 15 years to life on each count of aggravated murder, and part of the pleas the mothers were making were regarding whether or not this would be served consecutively or concurrently. Obviously, the Shirillas didn't want the sentences to be served consecutively because they're looking at a minimum of 30 years, assuming she gets paroled on the first sentence at the 15-year mark and on the second sentence at the 15-year mark. And the other two families don't want concurrent sentences, particularly the Flanagans, who just sat through a trial listening to their son be reduced to cargo. They felt that a concurrent sentence would send the same message that is kind of present throughout this case. Davion didn't matter. If only one person had been killed, she would have had the same sentence if she were permitted to serve them concurrently, which is something Jamie Flanagan does say.
Mm-hmm.
The judge says that she was struggling on the sentencing of this case because she knew that emotionally a concurrent sentence feels disrespectful to the families of victims. But she also stated that she did not think that Mackenzie would be paroled after 15 years, regardless if the sentences were concurrent or consecutive. So she ultimately decided that Mackenzie Shirilla would be serving her 2 15 to life sentences concurrently.
Gross. Disagree, but I'm not a judge. I have no legal expertise.
Davion's family were relieved with the verdict, but shocked with the concurrent running sentences. It didn't feel like their beloved son, whose eyes crinkled when he smiled and who someone said Mackenzie liked hanging out with because she got clout from him, was lost in the events that led up to the crash, lost in the accident, lost in the trial, was also lost in the sentencing phase, lost in the story, and didn't get justice. As they were leaving the sentencing hearing, Jamie Flanagan was, I assume, asked how she felt about having won, to which she replied, "There were no winners here today." Mackenzie's case was appealed to the Ohio Supreme Court. On September 26, 2024, they affirmed the lower court's ruling. In honor of Davion, the Flanagans have organized the Davion Flanagan Memorial Scholarship to help underprivileged students achieve their dreams of finishing their education and licensing to become a barber. On December 5th, 2024, Melissa Aviles became the first recipient of this scholarship. Melissa, just like Davion, had entered the foster care system at 8 by a loving family that later adopted her. She's a hard worker, compassionate, and known for her kindness, just like Davion. Her dream is to attend the same school that Davion was in the process of applying to, All-State Hairstyling and Barber College in Ohio City. The scholarship was able to cover her tuition entirely. The family has a GoFundMe set up, which is linked in our show notes.
You know, this was a very lengthy case.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the information you gave me was critical to my understanding of the situation. I think it would have been easy to glaze over some of the details related to Natalie, related to Dominic's family. And unfortunately, the sad pattern is that it would have been incredibly easy to overlook Davion and his story. And I'm so glad that you did not do that and instead spent time helping me understand just who Davion was and obviously how precious Davion and Dominic's lives both were. I think the Flanagans have every right to feel disregarded. And I also think that concurrent sentences, again, invalidates the experience they've had.
I think it reinforces the way that he's just lost. Like at every turn, he felt lost.
Right.
In the story.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it shouldn't be that way. Very obviously, it should not be that way. I believe I understand the judge's reasoning, but I think it's foolish to say, I don't think that she'll meet parole. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care if you think she'll meet parole.
Right.
I care about justice for the people's lives that she ultimately took.
Right, because I think that the judge is, and maybe this is something that you have to do as a judge. You have to look at a case from the perspective of a judge and assume that you will act in a way that you are doing what is in the most fair, legal way, and that you are assuming that other judges that come after you, if you're not the person in 15 years who this goes before, that they see it the same way as you, because you are all operating from a position of trying to do your best to uphold the law and uphold consequences. And you know what? In a way, maybe this is the best thing to happen to Mackenzie, to actually have to have consequences, but to also be put in a setting where she's held accountable for her actions, not just for the aggravated murders of 2 young men, but I imagine in prison, you're held accountable for stuff that you do and say. I don't know. I hope to never find out. Whenever I think about stuff like that, I just think about, not related to the case, but how women's prisons don't have televisions, but men's do. Because men will riot if their TVs are broken. And prisons are privately owned. All of these things don't seem right. But I think that she's probably in a place where she's actually having to learn how to handle consequences. And maybe this is the place that she's going to have some sort of redemption by being in a place where your mom can't keep you out of trouble.
Yeah.
Mom can't phone your cellmate and be like, hey, she just didn't.
Can't call the warden and threaten a lawsuit.
Right.
Can't call the warden and say, I'm going to go to a school board member. I'm going to go to a prison board member.
Right.
I'm going to go to the superintendent.
We have dinner with him every Thursday.
Yeah. Who
or her.
gives a shit?
Or them. Probably not them. So I do want to just remind everybody in the US and Canada, if you are suffering any emotional distress or are in a mental crisis, feeling suicidal, having thoughts of suicidal ideation, please reach out.
Homicidal ideation.
Well, I don't know that 988 is for homicidal ideation. I think that's 911. But maybe you need one of those two numbers. 988 if it's for you, 911 if it's for somebody else. This is just very frustrating because it didn't seem... The mom just really wanted the judge to give a fuck that she was laying around crying for 3 months. She only ate the snacks that he ate. They lived together. They probably both ate the same snacks anyway.
Right.
Just a wild, wild take. Because I don't think that she thought that she would survive the crash.
I think this is my second favorite case you've ever done. I really liked this one.
What was your first?
Yet to be released. But this is, I mean, I've heard it, but our audience has not. And I think they'll enjoy it when it gets to them. But for now, this is my favorite so far that we've released.
Well, it's only down from here.
Well, it's, I like that it experimented and examined this kind of microcosm of parenthood and discipline and socialization and this kind of adult movement to not wanting to be a parent, but a friend.
What do they
not
call
wanting
it?
To, I don't know.
Is it gentle parenting?
I think gentle parenting is still parenting.
Okay.
But what these people do, this kind of enabling of bad behavior and this casual refusal to accept responsibility and discipline, it's so sickening. And it seems like it's a greater move towards that all the time. And I'm certainly not someone who condones corporal punishment, but I think that at some point you have got to be a parent, not a bestie, not a steamroller. You're not supposed to remove every obstacle in your child's life. They are supposed to learn how to deal with adversity. They are supposed to learn how to navigate life. And you rob them of the opportunity to grow when you remove every obstacle in their way.
Well, and, I've seen people post online about parents who do that. And they say it's maybe cute when they're 3, but 12 years later, 15 years later, it's not cute when you've got a child that does not know how to own their actions or accept any responsibility because you have always swept up behind them and made sure that they didn't have to suffer any consequences for their actions. And I'll leave you with this. You are free to choose, but you are not free from the consequences of that choice.
100%.
And at some point, those consequences will find you. I think in this case, a lot of the choices were made by mom. A complete list of sources and any links can be found in the show notes.
And that's all we've got for this episode. If you enjoyed listening, want to hear more? Please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review. And make sure you're downloading every episode.
Recommend us to a friend and make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
And like us on Facebook at Until the End of Crime.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com, so feel free to reach out with questions or episode suggestions.
Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.